Hey guys, quick reminder before we get started that the world's largest arena for sports and collectibles is back in New York City this summer. Catch the return of Fanatics Fest from June 20th to the 22nd in the Javits Center, where you can share the floor with the biggest names in sports. That means appearances by over 500 iconic athletes and celebrities from your favorite teams like the Knicks, Mets, Yankees, the Giants, plus live panels and podcasts, exclusive merch collabs, and a trading card area with 200 of the biggest dealers in the biz, and so much more. Get your tickets today. Use the link in the description. It's from your friends here at Knicks Film School, from our friends over at Fanatics. It's 20% off. Use promo code Knicks Film School 20, and that offer is good. It's been extended just for you. It's good until June 4th. Again, that's Knicks Film School 20 for 20% off. You can get a 3-day pass over the weekend or a single-day admission on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. When the world's greatest athletes are in New York City, don't miss it.
Well, that sucked. Welcome to the Knicks Film School Postgame Show presented by Fanatics Sportsbook. I am Jonathan Macri. I am here with DJ Zullo. I'm not quite sure where I want to start this one. I got a couple places in my head that I think we could go. There is a, you know what? Let's you know what? We'll get to all the other. We'll get to Halliburton in a bit. Him being the best player in the game and the best player in the series. We will get to how big of a disaster being down 3-1 in a series where you could watch segments of it and feel like this team should be up 3-1, and whether on talent they should be up 3-1. We'll get to that in a bit. We will get to the players who did not come up big tonight and the coaching decisions that enabled those players, and one player in particular, I think, to have an outsized impact on the ultimate result of this game and what that means for the long-term future of coach, and how it is really just very much in line with a lot of people's complaints throughout this entire year. But I think I want to start here, which is that I was excited for this game. I was excited for this game because, and again, I've used this line about this Knicks teams a bunch, so it is overused at this point, but I just didn't take my own advice yet again. You know, how many times do you have to be fooled? How many times do you need to be duped into believing that now they figured it out? And when I say figured it out, I don't mean uncovered some secret code. I don't mean an X's and O's thing. I don't mean anything of that nature. I mean just figure out how to go out and play 48 minutes of serious basketball. Not even 2 games in a row, because they didn't play 48 minutes of serious basketball in the last game. They played about 14 minutes of serious basketball in the last game. But just how to put one foot in front of the other, and in front of the other, and keep it going. And then a walk becomes a jog, and a jog becomes a run, and maybe a run becomes a sprint. Well, we never get to that. We haven't gotten to that sprint this year. We haven't gotten even to a run this year. We've jogged a few times in some big spots here in the playoffs. But I was expecting, due to my own foolishness, I was expecting them to come out and play well. I was expecting them to come out and play a good, clean, smart game. And they didn't. They didn't. Thank you, Mark. No, it's not. They didn't play a good, clean, smart game. Did they play a gritty game at times? At times. They withstood one hell of a punch that was somewhat self-induced. Not self-induced, but it was a punch that they allowed, right? They opened themselves up to taking that punch early on, and sure enough, the Pacers landed it. They withstood it, and they did a really, really nice job withstanding it. And then for about a quarter and a half, close to a quarter and a half, they played the sort of basketball that I was hoping we'd see from them for this entire night. And I think at that moment, when it was 64-63, with maybe under a minute left in the second quarter, because we were really close. And DJ, you said it. Don't let go of the rope here. And I'll blame you. You must have jinxed it. It's your fault, DJ.
I'll take the blame.
You can take the blame, right?
There'll be a lot of blame going around. I'll take this one.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you can take this one,
I'll take it. I'll be a team player.
Yeah, that's it. And Pacers ended the half on a 6-0 run. There was some silliness in there. And then the Pacers came out and they started the second half on a 7-0 run. And we could sit here and we could talk about all kinds of different things. But for me, I think the thing that I will remember the most about this game, if I even remember it at all, and I'm probably going to try. Actually, I'm not even going to have to try that hard, if I'm being honest, to forget this game. I don't want to remember this game, and I don't think I will. But if I do think back to this game, and I do try to remember something from it, I think it is going to be the opening of that third quarter. Because if there was one segment of this game that reminded me and reminded every Knicks fan of the absolute worst that this team has had to offer this year, it was those first, 2-3 minutes of the quarter in which it looked like a team that was chilling on the couch on a Sunday afternoon, and somebody barged in and say, "Oh, guys, you guys are due on the court in like 2 minutes. Lace up, man. You got to get out there." And all of them looked at each other, and all of them in that moment looked at each other and be like, "Really? We gotta do this shit. All right. I guess we gotta do what we gotta do." That's how they played. That's how they played in that stretch. And then they sort of kind of got it going, and they cut it down. I mean, I don't think after that it was ever a one possession game. I'm not even sure.
89-84, I think, was when they had gotten it down to like a reasonable, manageable number.
Yeah, they in the I mean, effectively the closest they got. What'd you say? You said 89-84?
I think that's what I had it written down. Maybe I have the number.
No, that sounds about right.
Okay.
Effectively, for me, the last moment that it was like close, like really close, was when I think they had a chance to cut it to either 4 or 3, and Deuce had that turnover, and they came back, and it was a made bucket. There were some moments there late in the fourth where if they had gotten a stop, and maybe that's one other thing we could hit on before we get to Super Chats tonight, is how they closed the game with Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns on the floor together, and you understand why they did that. Got to score points down, the whole thing, and how that is just such a haul for them when they try to do that. But we'll save that. That's where I'm starting off, Deej. I don't know if that's where you want to start off. I don't know if you think that there's a bigger thing you want to start off with this game, but that's where I want to start off.
Yeah, and just to sort of hammer home that point of the third quarter, there was at least 2 possessions of the first 4 or 5 where at least one Knick didn't know what play was being called. There's one, I tweeted it. You can go check my account to see it. It's with, I think it might have been the second possession, or maybe the first. Brunson's waiting for a screen for Mitch, and Brunson's just standing there, and Mitch is like in La La Land, and Bridges has the ball at the top of the key with Halliburton on him, and he's just waiting for Brunson to get the screen so then Brunson can come and catch it. The thing is delayed. The action is sputtering out of control, and Bridges has to throw a late pass, and Halliburton deflects it, causes a turnover. And it was a microcosm of like what this team does to start these third quarters, where it's not just the lack of like intensity. There's just a mental aspect to this where they just seemed completely disengaged, which is an insane thought considering the moment. And we shouldn't be surprised by it because this has been the theme of the season, at least the theme of the playoffs, where they come out of these third quarters and there is just a complete lack of urgency, despite the fact that I think reasonable minds would say that they were playing to make sure they have a reasonable shot to win this series. And they came out in this third quarter and didn't play like it. And I thought they came out of the game offensively. I thought they obviously scored well and were doing all the right things, but defensively, to allow the Pacers to get into so much easy transition offense, I thought was pretty unforgivable, knowing that that is exactly how the Pacers were going to play. And it was why I thought playing these double bigs together was a recipe for disaster eventually. And it was something I saw in game 2. Game 3, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. And then I think today and tonight, you saw how tough it is for Towns and for Robinson to defend against this offense. When it's moving at the pace they're moving, and all the secondary actions, all the space they have to cover, it's really untenable. And the starting lineup that played tonight, they were -8 in 10 minutes. The old starters happen to be a +5 in 928. So take that for what it's worth. The Hart with the starters, they were a +5. The Robinson with the starters at -8. And I think it's because you didn't feel Robinson dominate the offensive glass. I thought the Pacers did a nice job of prioritizing keeping him off. And defensively, as I not to beat a dead horse, but it's just so much space and semi-transition to have to account for that. I don't think it's reasonable to expect Robinson and Cat to be able to manage that. And I thought you saw that possession after possession to start the game.
Yeah, I mean, the Robinson and Towns, when they were on the floor together, they were outscored 30-22 in 10 minutes and 17 seconds. Now, you look at that and you look at how many points the Pacers scored in total. They gave up about as the pace of points that they were giving up is about the same as the pace of points that the team was giving up regardless. So I guess from that perspective, it doesn't look as bad, but I agree with you. Watching it, it didn't pass the smell test as it's not working. You said we shouldn't be surprised. We watched the whole game together. I don't know if you could tell or if you were paying attention. There was no, and this is the worst part. This is the most damning indictment. This is whatever you want to say. There was no part of me that was watching this tonight and was surprised. And if anybody who's been paying attention to the post games throughout this series, I was apoplectic after game 1 because game 1 I was back. I was fully on board. I mean, coming off the Boston series, how could you not be? After the first 45 minutes of the game, how could you not be fully on board? And then the last several minutes happens. But then, game 2 I watched. I was like, okay. I was watching game 3 up until the craziness in the last 14 minutes. I was like, okay. And then tonight I was watching it and I'm like, okay. And that's because that is more often than not who this team has been. And it's crazy. It is crazy to sit here and say, DJ, that this team has played 16 basketball games in this postseason so far, right? In those 16 games, they have played more bad basketball than good basketball. Now, they have saved some of their best basketball for the most important moments. But they have played more bad basketball than good basketball. And that's going to be my way to transition. And we'll get back to the specifics of this game, I promise. But that's going to be my way to transition to big picture for a moment. Because we were watching the game with Mensa tonight. Shout out to Mensa. Shout out to Sean. They were both on the playback. And Mensa, was kind of adamant at one point, like, man, this team doesn't belong on the same floor with you, meaning the Pacers. And you can look at the talent, although the Pacers had the best player in the game tonight. Put that aside. They may have had the second best player in the game. I don't know who you thought was the second best player. I haven't looked at Siakam's final stats. Felt like he was pretty good. 30 points on 21 shots. Is that good, Deej?
Pretty good.
decent on with good
Not
defense. With good defense all the way around. So yeah, may have had the two best players in the game. Yeah, you could look at the talent, and you could look at the Knicks half-court offense tonight, which for large stretches of the night was actually really good. And you could look at all the things that their different players could do, and how, you know, the individual brilliance that they're able to muster with Brunson and Towns. But and look, the Pacers happen to be their opponent. I don't say this to blow smoke up the Pacers' ass, because God knows I would literally rather saw off my own arm than say anything nice about this team and this franchise, because I hate them. I hate them more than any other team in professional sports. But you look at them and you look at how they go about their business and how they are coached, how their best player operates, how they operate together as a team, the consistency with which they operate, how they play together, how they play for each other, their decision-making collectively and individually, accountability, everything. All the hallmarks of teams that have success. Are they a more talented team than the Knicks? My response to that question is, what does it matter? What does it matter when you have one team that has gone through the playoffs very clearly on one path, and you have this other team in the Knicks that has gone through the playoffs with some great moments, but their postseason run has been defined by their inconsistency and their ability to overcome that inconsistency, but the inconsistency to begin with.
And all the things you just rattle off about this Pacer team, I think it speaks to one overarching attribute is they have an identity about them that is probably stronger than any team in the NBA other than maybe Oklahoma City with their defense. Yeah, that's the one that you can probably put in the same category of how this Pacer team goes about what they want to do. And they were so annoyed about themselves after game 3, to the point where if you watch their post-game press conference and anything leading up to this game, they were so sure that whatever happened in that game was their own doing.
Yeah.
And it was very easy for them, and there was a confidence about them. And when we talked earlier before the game started, I thought the Knicks needed at least get to 125 to win this game. It's because of whatever led into this game, the Pacers were going to come out and be the Pacers. Yeah. Because they have such a strong identity that they can lean on that. And it's very easy for them to just fall back on that, where the Knicks can have the things the Knicks fall back on, the grittiness, the wherewithal, the hard-headedness, the stubbornness, a lot of that trickling down from the head coach. That is a form of an identity, but it's not a basketball identity. It's not something that the team can collectively say, this is how we're going to attack this opponent. These are the things we did wrong, and these are the corrections that we know we can make because we've corrected it, and we've made these adjustments dozens of times this season and last season. Pacers have the ability to just fall back on that. The Knicks don't. So whether or not the Knicks have more talent on paper, to your point, doesn't matter, because the Pacers could fall back on what is an elite attribute in terms of their identity and factor in some phenomenal individual talent on this team, the depth, going 10, 11 players that they really needed to. Like, there's so much that they can do that maybe increases their overall impact performance, despite maybe a talent level that maybe you don't think falls to or rises to the next level. We've been waiting for the Knicks to find their identity. It hasn't come, and it likely won't come. The Pacers have one, and that's a huge difference between these two teams. Huge difference. And you saw that you see that within games where the Knicks get into these ruts and they can find it and they can lose it, and they find it and they can lose it. The Pacers found their verve and their energy in the first quarter, and it led them out to a 8-point lead. And luckily for the Knicks, they were able to keep it within arm's reach, and they didn't let the game get away from them. To your point, that was a good job there to not let go of the rope at that point. But there was so many occasions where the Pacers were just like, all right, let's ramp it up a little bit. And they would go on these 7-0 runs, extend the lead a little bit. And the Knicks weren't able to take advantage on the stuff that they were trying to do. Because what do the Knicks want to do? Is it a Karl Towns takeover quarter? Is it Jalen Brunson takeover quarter? Or is it Mikal Bridges trying to make corner threes that bring you back into a game? What do the Knicks have that they can reliably fall back on quarter after quarter after quarter? That's the difference between these two teams.
And you could count. I mean, look, are there bad, are there maybe some bad shots that the Pacers take, or do they miss shots? Certainly. But it feels like you could count the amount of possessions on one hand with the Indiana, where it's like, man, that was a bad offensive possession. Like, what were they doing there? You could count them on one hand. Even on defense, you look at how they go about their business, and you're like, man, what the hell? Like, boy, did they blow that one? Who fell asleep? Like, maybe a few more on defense, but it's not that many. And then you look at those respective numbers for the Knicks, and it's higher. Now, all that being said, and this gets back to the talent part, the Knicks, I mean, we were sitting there, and if the refs make the proper call on Pascal Siakam very clearly holding OG Anunoby's jersey as he's trying to go up for a defensive rebound, and the refs see that and call it, which it was the correct call. It was very blatant in the moment that it was the correct call. Mm-hmm. And OG Anunoby has a chance to go to the free throw line with a chance to cut that lead to 4 with, I mean, whatever it was, 3 minutes to go or something like that. Yeah,
it was 121-115 on the missed call.
Yeah. It was 120 to 114, and then but it ended up being a foul on the Knicks. Turner goes to the line, hits 1 or 2.
That's right.
So, despite everything that I just said about the collective unit and the collective team and all of that stuff, the fact that you were still in position to have a chance in this game speaks to the talent. And you can look up and you could see Jalen Brunson, 31 points on 19 shots. Was it a great Jalen Brunson game? I don't think any of us would sit here and say it was a great Jalen Brunson game, but 31 points on 19 shots is 31 points on 19 shots. Karl-Anthony Towns, 24 points on 15 shots. Again, was this a great Karl-Anthony Towns game? No. OG Anunoby. Talk about a guy who actually has really shown up as the series has gone along. 22 points on 16 shots. That's good. And you look at some of the bench guys. Delon Wright, 9 minutes. Boy, sure seems like he should have played a few more. Plus 11 in 9 minutes.
Yes, he should have pplayed more.
Landry Shamet, plus 6 in 11 minutes. Maybe not as much. Delon Wright. I mean, minute for minute, Delon Wright might have been the best player in the game, although he did have one kind of questionable shot attempt, and I think there was maybe one bad turnover there too. But it was very good. It was excellent. And then you could look at some other guys. I'll get Mitch out of the way just because Mitch did have the worst plus minus on the team. He was a minus 20 in 19 minutes. Mitch is going to get critiqued for having a lack of impact in this game. I am not going to sit here and say that Mitchell Robinson had some kind of terrible game. Was it a great Mitch game? No. Probably wasn't even a good Mitch game. But to me, whatever blame you want to give him, I think pales in comparison to two guys who I will remember this game for what they did not do. And that is Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart. And then this is going to be the transition to talking about the coach. Because, Josh Hart, he gets moved out of the starting lineup. Ostensibly, no longer, okay. We no longer have to play Josh Hart 40 minutes, right? It's not a given. And I'm looking up. He didn't play 40 minutes. Played 36 minutes. Look, he was a -1. Josh Hart had a really good fourth quarter. Josh Hart was really bad in this game for the vast majority of it. And he was really bad in the first half when he had, I believe, 4 turnovers. and several other questionable decisions, some really poor defensive possessions. And then there's Mikal Bridges, and look, again, you got to play guys. Mikal Bridges, that was more just a matter of missing shots, but hey, been a lot of games this postseason where we've looked at Mikal Bridges and said, well, he just needed to make more shots. Well, guess what? If you miss enough shots consistently enough, it starts to build up, and it's not good enough. And he had 3 great looks in the final minutes of that game to hit some threes, and maybe 2 great looks, 1 okay look. And he didn't hit any of them. Did hit 2 threes in the fourth. I don't want to discount those. Again, just like Josh Hart, made some big plays in the fourth. And then you take a step back from the decision to play hard as much as Tibbs did, at the expense of maybe a DeLon Wright, who again was really good. And then you talk about what we were talking about before, about what is this team's identity? What do they have to fall back on? Yes, stubbornness, grit, toughness, the whole thing. That is their way to embody the coach. But in terms of reliable, repeatable offense, defense traits that they could go back to, where we see the whole being greater than the sum of the parts on a consistent basis, it's not there right now. And I mean, right now, they're 1 loss away from the offseason. So I don't know what else to say.
That's the position we're in. And I think the conundrum of trying to analyze this team, because you get these incredible highs, usually in moments where everything feels like it's on the line. And they have had an incredible ability to perform in these high pressure moments when it feels like season on the brink stuff. So it's that idea that maybe inflates our perception of this team in terms of their ability to respond in those ways. But to me, I watched this game, and it felt this way in Game 3, and most of the decisions came out, I think, in the right way for the coach. But there is a level of trying to find something right now in this series, where Game 3 was probably the extreme version of that. But I think even in this one, there was a little bit of that, of just trying to figure out, you make this lineup change, but the comfort zone is still going to be Josh Hart. And I think the problem for Tibbs is you didn't get what you thought you were going to get from Robinson and Cat.
Nope.
To his point, defensive rebounding is critical, and that is where Josh Hart theoretically is going to provide his most value. So I understand playing him extended minutes, but in my opinion, there's no world where Josh Hart should be playing 36 minutes and Deuce McBride 14. I know Deuce didn't play great in this game, but it didn't feel like he was given a lot of rope to play great in this game. Josh Hart was given plenty of rope to play great in this game. And to his credit, and you mentioned it, he did have a really strong fourth quarter that maybe makes that plus minus look a little better than it should have, because we all saw what he did in the first 2.5 quarters.
It was painful.
It was painful. The turnovers. I mean, we can just stop there. Some of those passing decisions that led to no shots on one end and Pacer runouts on the other. Fast break points, Pacers were plus 13. Points off turnovers, Pacers were plus 11. Second chance points, again, Josh Hart should help in that area. Knicks were only even in that category. You can't, in a game that was within striking distance for a lot of it, you can't hemorrhage 13 points in fast break, 11 in turnovers points, and then just play even on the second chance points category. And Josh Hart is supposed to help in those areas. He's supposed to help in those areas. And he actively made the Pacers better on offense with his turnovers. And it was just not a good enough performance from him. You mentioned Mikal Bridges. I thought some of the shot decisions in the first half, especially when the Knicks were going well in the half court, to take some of those semi-transition, like fall away mid-range shots, where at best they're a 47%, 48%, maybe field goal percentage shot. Your offense is getting better than that if you just run your stuff. You didn't need that. And defensively, listen, he's supposed to limit Halliburton. You're not asking him to shut him down. And the Brunson piece of it is a big factor because Brunson is not switching those screens, which I thought was by the second half, I thought we've seen Halliburton burn you time and time again. Just have Brunson switch it and keep it in front, keep it one-on-one, live with the result. That's where I would have gone. Tibbs didn't do it. Brunson kept showing. Halliburton kept burning him. That does make it harder for Bridges to defend in that environment. But he did allow Halliburton a lot of room. I thought the pickup points were much too shallow. I thought he should have been more aggressive physically getting into Halliburton once he crossed half court. Let him feel you that this has been a ongoing issue with Bridges all year. He let Halliburton get a rhythm, get downhill, get the Knicks in the blender, and the Knicks never really recovered from that. And, you're right to point out those two players. If you get B- games from one of them, let alone, both, the Knicks probably win the game. That's where we're at.
Let's hone in on even more specific. If there is a defining number of the game, I think you just said it a minute ago. 17 turnovers for the Knicks, 11 turnovers for the Pacers. Now look, the Pacers are one of the lowest turnover teams in the league. But and that is a credit to their point guard, first and foremost. There is no coach in basketball who preaches low turnover more than the Knicks coach in Tom Thibodeau. Now, obviously, that message got lost in translation somewhere, and there was a bit of irony in the fact that the guy who was most egregiously breaking that most hallowed of rules was a guy who, again, 20 minutes in the first half for Josh Hart. And by the way, probably would have played. When did he foul out? Because however many minutes he played, it would have been.
Yeah, that's a good question. A
couple more minutes if he didn't foul out. So it was 36 minutes. It would have been about 38 minutes. And again, I'm not it's not all on Josh Hart and his 5 turnovers because, hey, Jalen Brunson had some bad turnovers tonight. He had 3. Mikal Bridges had 3 turnovers tonight. OG had a couple. Cat had a couple. But it's just, if there was a game that we've seen where, and I've been referring to it as this for 7, 8, however many months it's been, where the theory of the case, right, behind the construction of this roster, where the theory of the case you looked at and you said, yeah, I'm not buying it. I think it might have been this one because your quote unquote top tier defenders were not able to be disruptive enough. And I say that I want to give a big tip of the cap to OG Anunoby, who I did think played a very good defensive game. Finished, I think, with, what do you have, 2 steals and 3 blocks, or 3 steals and 2 blocks. OG was really good. And I want to give him credit. But like, as you mentioned, Mikal was like, that's not the guy you traded for. Josh Hart, poor defensive game. And then with Brunson and Cat, you didn't really talk about Brunson's defensive game. There's a poor defensive game from Brunson.
Yeah. Well, I say he helped make life really difficult for Bridges in that sense, because I thought having Brunson try to recover, keeping him out of the action, I get the theory behind that, but I don't understand why we're acting as if Tyrese Halliburton isn't a more dangerous passer and isn't a guy you can keep in front in the half court. If you're Jalen Brunson and you can't keep Tyrese Halliburton in front of you consistently, then again, we're talking about larger, more alarming team building, roster construction issues, because that's where you could have gone. And I think you would have had better results. But that's the problem when you have Jalen Brunson as your best player. The Knicks are petrified to keep him in action, despite a Boston series where he did have to guard, and he held up pretty well. Why are we not putting that same onus on him in this series?
Yeah.
Like, I don't quite understand it.
Well,
Make Halliburton a scorer.
It's another coaching decision, and look, thus far, it hasn't paid off. And thus far, there's been more coaching decisions in this series that haven't paid off than coaching decisions that have paid off. And look, this is the microscope that you are under in the conference finals.
Yes.
It is the microscope you are under in the conference finals in any situation. If you make it this far, it is an especially powerful microscope when you came into the conference finals as the favorite team and you're down 3-1. And like, we could sit here and like, I don't know what they're going to do on when's the next game? Wednesday night? No, Thursday night. I don't know what they're going to do on Thursday night. Maybe they extend the series. Maybe they don't. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. I think it does matter. I mean, obviously, because if they lose, their season's over. But, it's been a really telling series in a lot of ways. And I think you hid from stuff for long enough against Detroit, and you were able to hide from stuff for long enough against Boston. But to their credit, they played the two best games of their season against Celtics. That's like we cannot erase those games. Even Game 6 when Tatum didn't play, that was a special performance by them, and they deserve all the credit in the world for that. But this is where they're at. They're down 3-1. I'm not getting into like what if they lose the series in 5 games. We'll talk about that if and when they do. I don't know. Before we go, anything else you want to say about this game before we turn to maybe very briefly areas of focus for Game 5?
Well, in the last 2 games, the Knicks have 30 assists. Pacers had 29. Can I say, I was going to bring that up just now because I mentioned the defensive side of the ball and like the theory of the case. The theory of the case is that this is supposed to be an offensively brilliant basketball team. And early on, remember all those games early on in the season? Those games. Knicks set not a record, but it was like 30 plus assists pretty much.
No, they did set assist records early in the season.
Well, there you go.
And I would, one of my favorite things to do writing the newsletter, and I would do it on the post games, even live, because I would keep track of it. And I would be like, the Knicks have now had like more 30 assist games this season than they've had in the last, 3 or 4 or whatever seasons combined. And it was such a fun thing to update on a regular basis because we had never seen it before. We had never seen a Knicks offense look like this. Not close. And to say that has gone completely the way of the dodo bird is an understatement. Yeah, you'll get stretches where they look unstoppable. They scored 64 points with like a minute or 2 minutes to go in the first half tonight. Brunson,
they're still a great shot-making team.
Yeah.
But they're not a great playmaking team.
That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. And, the Pacers, to their credit, they just stay home. So if Cat's going to drive 15 times a night, not that he passes anyway, but they're not going to collapse and send a bunch of bodies his way. Same with Brunson. When he gets into his paint touches, floater range, they're going to play one-on-one. They're not going to send a lot of help. I don't know how many driving kicks Brunson has had in this series. That would probably be something I'll look up after we get off or tomorrow just to see how many threes he's creating off his half-court paint touches. It doesn't feel like a lot. And he's been in the series against Detroit and Boston. I felt like you were getting Brunson getting into the paint, spraying it out to Anunoby, to Bridges for open corner threes, much more regular than you're seeing in this series. So the Pacers you got to give them credit for that, but also the Knicks are not they have good passers and they have a lot of good, solid, above average passers. They don't have any great passers. And in a lot of ways, of all the things we're talking about, the difference between these two teams, you have one of the best passers in the NBA, and you have a bunch of guys that are just good passers on the other side. And you're seeing the difference. And you can throw TJ McConnell in there as well as a guy that can make high-level passing reads. And it's a really tough case to be made that the Knicks can hold up offensively when the other team is just creating much more efficient looks with their passing compared to what the Knicks are doing.
Absolutely. And, you could sit here and you could say, well, yeah, not a lot of assists, and no, the offense doesn't rise to this higher level. But if Mikal Bridges tonight goes, 9 of 15 instead of, and I'm actually looking at it, he actually hit. How is it that he only hit? It says he hit 4 or 5 from deep. Did I imagine him missing?
He must have had a toe on the line on one of those corner threes.
He must have had toes on the line in a few of those. But whatever. You can sit here and say if Mikal Bridges goes 9 of 15 and there were a bunch of makeable ones he missed instead of 6 of 15, they win this game. How often are you going to get against a decent defense? And their Pacers are at least a decent defense, and they are probably better than decent defense. What are the odds you're going to get really good shot making games or above average shot making games from all 4 of your best players? It's rare. That is why you need to lean back on the other stuff, which is where Josh Hart is supposed to come in, by the way. That was why I think this starting 5 in theory was supposed to be so good, because Josh Hart was going to be that connector that kind of tied it all together, and that was the glue, the lubricant, to keep things moving along. And that has not been the case for some time. And now obviously he's out of the starting lineup, and you've replaced him with Mitchell Robinson, who was a player that goes without saying, does not do any of that.
Well, could we talk about what we can look forward to? Because
sure,
I don't know how you start Mitch again with Cat.
So would you move to Deuce?
I would. I don't think the coach will do that. I'll just say this, and without watching it live, it's always hard to make declarative statements on things that are complex. So I reserve the right to change my mind in this. But watching live, I don't think you can play Cat and Mitch to start game 5. I would play Deuce. I think Tibbs will see the same things and start Hart, which to me, you're playing him 36 minutes anyway. I think you gave Mitch a shot, and the offense is too dynamic for those two guys to navigate it all. And I don't think he's going to start Deuce.
So in terms of game 5 adjustments for you, it really does come down to just rotation and start and lineup decisions. You can't
give the Pacers this advantage in transition that you will have every time Mitch and Cat share the floor. Especially to start these games when teams are at like peak conditioning, peak energy. Like it just doesn't, I understand the idea of starting Mitch, but against this team, I just don't think it makes sense. And you're going to kickstart the Pacers again in game 5 because they know how to attack it now. Maybe game 3, there was the newness of it, the novelty. They didn't really understand like the ways they can really attack those two bigs. They know now. And once you know in the playoffs, it's kind of over.
Yeah.
And then you have to and then it's about do you adjust back? I think you need to adjust back. And I don't know if that means Hart or Deuce. I just don't, I wouldn't go with those two bigs again, starting the game. Maybe you play them in the later part of the game when your defense is feeling a little more structured and the Pacers are not killing you in transition. You get away with it. But yeah, I wouldn't do it right away. Plus you get Turner being so locked in, keeping Mitch off the glass, so you're not even getting the Mitch offensive rebounding advantage to start these games. Mitch actually, he did get some offensive rebounds. It was later in the game.
Third quarter, he did.
Third quarter when guys are more tired, they're not as locked in mentally at that point. To me, I wouldn't start Mitch again with Cat. I think it would be a recipe for another great pacer start to the game, getting up and down the floor and putting it behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, and like we know the Pacers obviously are not going to be phased or intimidated coming into Madison Square Garden. In fact, I think they will, and their point guard in particular, will relish the opportunity to close out the Knicks in front of their home fans. And this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'll turn it back to you if you have anything you want to say before I let you go. I'm gonna go back on something I said a minute ago in terms of the importance of Game 5. If the Knicks lose Game 5 and they finish this postseason with 3 home wins, right? Game 1 Detroit.
Game 1 Detroit.
Game 4 Boston. Game 6
Game 6 Boston. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. If they lose on Thursday night and finish this postseason with 3 home wins, not one of which will have come in the conference finals. We heard very clearly coming into the playoffs that if, and I'll just repeat what Fred Katz said, before the Detroit series, if they lose in the round 2, there might be changes. If they lose in Detroit or to Detroit, there will be changes. And I think there was this assumption that because they got past Boston, it eliminated some of those possibilities. And I will just, my own 2 cents, my own personal opinion, that is just my own thought in my brain. If they lose this game on Thursday, there are going to be changes. And I think it's not a question of, it's a question of, is it going to be the coach and a major roster shakeup? Or is it going to be an either or scenario? But I don't see any universe where a loss on Thursday would not result in something very significant this summer. And again, we will talk about that when the time comes. I really don't want to talk about it tonight because this team is still alive. They could win 3 straight. It's been done 13 times in NBA history. 2 of the games are at home. 2 of the games would be at home, which again, you would think would be an advantage, although, they and you know what, Deej and Rick Carlisle will appreciate this. They do still have the campaign button to push. So that's a big one.
Yeah, Cam's still there.
Cam's still there.
What's funny is the lineup that, I don't know if it was the best lineup of the night, but it was the OG Cat, Hart, DeLon Wright, Shamet minutes in that second quarter. I think to start the second quarter, that was really impressive. Would like to maybe see a little more of that in Game 5. Look, I think
they outscored Indiana in 17 minutes and 17 seconds. They outscored the Pacers 17-7. Fantastic defensive stretch, albeit a lot of those minutes were not without Albert on the floor.
Yeah. Big caveat, it matters a lot, but they were able to, Wright especially keeping TJ McConnell in check, which, as we know, is not nothing in these playoffs. So, look, we're talking. It's a disappointing loss and a lot of negativity, rightfully so. Looking ahead to Game 5, the margins are probably tighter than we think in terms of like talent or just like the ways the Knicks can actually win these games. I think the margins are pretty tight. I would assume the Knicks win Game 5 based solely on the fact that you are playing for your life and the Pacers have another home game there. So I think that alone should give the Knicks a massive edge that they should take advantage of, because the talent discrepancy, all the things that we're talking about it is pretty tight. So I would give the Knicks a pretty sizable edge there.
To be clear, what you just said is exactly why I just said what I said a minute ago.
Yeah.
Because I fully believe that to be true. And you should win game 5. And you should at least send this back to Indiana and get to a game 6 and have that moment in your building. You should.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, it speaks volumes. Look, a 4-1 loss and a loss in when
your
you're
building,
favored.
When you're favored. Now, I don't think they should have been favored, but who cares what I think? They were favored. They were ostensibly the better team. They just beat the Boston Celtics. You can't go down in game 5 in your building 4-1. It's not. I thought after Boston, the coach was safe. I didn't process the idea of the Knicks going down 4-1 to the Pacers. If they do that, I agree with you. There will be and probably should be significant changes. And I would assume that would present itself with a team that would use that to their advantage to win the game.
And like, you've gone down 3-1. The Pacers have, again, we talked about all the things the Pacers are doing well. We talk about how they're a well-machine. We talk about how they don't beat themselves. It's not, other than the beginning of this game, and obviously the Nesmith explosion to end game 1. It's not like the Pacers have come out and shot like they did in like game 7 against you last year, which was like one of the most inexplicable shooting performances that anybody has seen in NBA history. Like, they've made a lot of shots, but guess what? They always make a lot of shots. This is what they do. This is what they are.
I mean, in the second quarter, they scored 26 points. Third quarter, 33. Fourth quarter, 28. These are like manageable scoring numbers for a great offense. It's the 43 in quarter 1 that killed you. But to your point, overall, the Knicks have had some success here defending this team. I think with better personnel, different personnel, maybe it gets even better. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we move on to the rest of the show?
No, I mean, it's just it's a weird team. It would not. It is. And weird Brunson game as well. Like, I feel like he's made some mental errors and turnovers that are just not him. He scored well and his efficiency looks good on paper. I just haven't felt like he's been a great player in the series overall.
We're gonna look. I mean, we don't have to. We can look at his series right now. Jalen Brunson in this series is averaging 33.3 points per game. He's shooting 48.3% from the field, only shooting 31% from deep on 7.3 attempts per game. That's not great. Getting to the line over 10 times a game, shooting 93%. Now, the dirty little, and now here's the seedy underbelly. 5.5 assists, 4.0 turnovers. Tyrese Halliburton in this series, 11.0 assists, 1.5 turnovers. So Brunson has scored even with the 3-point shot pretty efficiently. Again, 33.3 points on 22 shots a game. But I don't know that anybody is going to look back at the series, even with those scoring numbers and that efficiency. I don't know that anyone's saying, "Oh yeah, it's been a really good Brunson series." It just hasn't been.
No, and he's a minus 26 overall in the series in the 4 games. Like, it's just not been. He's not been good enough, and I know the bar is extremely high.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're asking him to be the best. Essentially one of the 5 best players in the sport. That's the bar.
And offensively, you can argue there's been moments where he's gotten there. The offense hasn't been to the point where it's fully made up for what the defense is giving back. And I think that's That's the part of the balance there that he has not struck, that he has in most postseasons as a Knick. The offense has carried the defense. Not quite doing that in this series.
Yep. The balance hasn't been there. Here's $100 in fan cash. Thank you for that, Sportsbook. Player props aren't posted yet, but of the starting lineup for the majority of the season, who's over points prop would you take in games 5? In game 5, who's under? So I'm looking at it right now, and they are posted now. So we have Jalen Brunson. The line is 30.5. Towns, 20.5. Bridges, 17.5. OG, 15.5. And then, is that Mitchell Robinson? Oh, no, Josh Hart, 9.5. What are you thinking, Deej?
The Brunson over feels pretty solid for me.
I would go either Brunson over or Hart over.
Yeah, I was thinking of Hart. I think an Anunoby under feels right for me. Under 15,
but it's a 15.
Yeah.
It's 15.5. He's gone over that in every game. He went 16, and then tonight he was really good. I got to tell you, Mr. Bridges, I'm looking in your direction for the under.
You know what? I get Brunson over, Towns under. I think Brunson goes for upper 30s, Towns a little below his average in the 17 to 18 range, 17 to 19. Solid game, but just not quite scoring the same amount with Brunson going off. That's
So you're taking
thought.
the Towns under. I'm taking the Bridges under, which is a perfect transition. Last thing we'll say before I let you go. At no time in this postseason have we been able to sit here and say with uniformity, oh man, both of those trades knocked it out of the park. There have been moments where we have been high on the Towns trade. There have been moments when we've been high on the Bridges trade. It has seesawed, and occasionally both have sunk, which I know makes the analogy not work anymore because you have to have one up and one down.
Yeah.
For as much as we can and will talk about, and I know tonight's going to be all about the coach, and that's fine. It's fine. For as far as they got, for as deep as they got in these playoffs, the fact that we're going to be sitting here, who knows what could happen, but at this rate, could we at least say that there is a very high likelihood that we will be sitting here after the Knicks are eliminated, having, let's say, questions about both of those deals. And more importantly, whether both guys are like definitive pieces of the puzzle moving forward.
It's absolutely an unsettling position to be in, to consider that not one, but two of your quote unquote all-in trades are potentially not working out.
Not working out as well as you would have liked, ideally.
Yeah, I guess it's weird because they are in the Eastern Conference Finals, so there is this like position that we're in that you can argue that they wouldn't be in this spot without both those guys who have helped them win a lot of games and win games in this postseason. But you're paying Karl-Anthony Towns a ton of money for a lot of years, and you gave up a lot to get Mikal Bridges. And you traded a lot to get Karl Towns as well. So I think there's the fact that we're questioning it is a pretty uncomfortable position to be in. But there is, as you said, there's still time here for it to feel like you can still move forward with them. And that's where it gets into would a new coach be enough of a change to bring out the very best, or quote unquote maximize the roster. Now the roster might still be flawed enough to where it wouldn't matter in terms of championship equity, but I think you've seen enough to where you can maybe talk yourself into, the talent is good enough that we just need a change in the approach and the principles and what we believe in from the coaching staff to really bring out the best. And I think that's a tough question to answer because I think you can go in a lot of different directions. It could be more of the players, more of the coach, combination. And then what do you do about the potential return of who you're sending out? I mean, it's a very complex scenario, but it is fair to wonder because the assets sent out were enough to where you should be questioning it and critiquing it often because that's what these trades warrant. It's a microcosm of like what this team is in a lot of ways. The inconsistency, but the highs can be great. And maybe there's still time for those highs to present itself to where you feel really good about this team going forward. But right now, you can't really say that.
Last thing, you want to laugh?
Sure.
Total plus minus of all players that have made it to the second round or the conference finals in the NBA playoffs. Do you want to guess who is last by a goodly margin?
It's Mikal Bridges, isn't it?
At minus 65. You will not guess who the next, and I don't believe that I don't know that number is a fair reflection of Bridges' postseason performance, although I can't sit here and be like, that's definitely an unfair reflection of Bridges' postseason performance. This other guy, I don't think it's a fair reflection, but then again, I haven't, he hasn't hit as many shots as you would have liked. You want to guess who the second worst player is of all players in the conference finals? He's not a Knick right yet, or he's not a Knick anymore.
Oh, is it Julius or Dante?
Other guy, Dante.
Is it Dante? Okay. Yeah.
Minus 41.
Yeah. I mean, he's shooting is not quite been there.
Yeah.
Consistently. But yeah, I don't think that's a great microcosm of like his overall performance, but it's funny. It's those are the two guys that sort of swap spots there.
That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah.
Okay. Deej, thank you so much.
Right.
As I say it all the time, I don't know how I would do. I love having you for wins. I need you for losses. So yeah. Any last thoughts? Or
well, I just got to figure out this. I'm going to try to figure out the starting lineup thing. Maybe it's more tenable than I'm giving it credit for. Just on the rewatch, like can you go in with the same group into Game 5 and keep your head above water defensively? I don't know. That's my task, and I'll report back. Let you know.
Good luck with that one. Thank you, Deej.
All right, buddy.